or Roger Lanctot, Director of Automotive Connected Mobility at TechInsights. And yes, I was at Strategy Analytics. I didn't change companies. We were acquired a year ago by TechInsights. And so TechInsights was several times the size of Strategy Analytics. They are known for, to the extent that they are known, for reverse engineering semiconductors, so getting down to kind of a molecular kind of a level. So it's not screwdriver tear down kind of activity. And they actually acquired Strategy Analytics because we've been forecasting semiconductor volumes in the automotive industry for quite some time. And you probably are aware that smartphones aren't selling quite as well, and the automotive industry has become a major focal point for the semiconductor industry as a major growth opportunity, very significant growth opportunity. So we also have a smartphone, mobile and wireless vertical and a smart home vertical, but automotive was the piece that they were most interested in. So the automotive industry, as I see it, has had its heart broken. So there was one thing we could do well here, which was make internal combustion engines and transmissions. And now we're being told, yeah, stop doing that. You can't do that anymore. You have to do all this other stuff that you know nothing about and have no expertise in. So it's painful. It's tough. And there's another important paradigm to understand here, because I'm supposed to be talking about payments. And that is, I used to use this image quite a bit, talking about the fact that 10% of revenue in the automotive industry comes from the aftermarket, but 80% of profit. So dealers and car makers, we don't start making money until the car leaves the lot. Then we start making money. That's gone, okay? That is just, the lights are out. And there was no better example of that I had than I had two dealer visits recently, one from my BMW X3, where they call me up and say, oh yeah, your tires are a little bit out of alignment, and it probably just needs a whack with a mallet, right? But okay, how much is that going to be? $350. So, okay, thank you, BMW. May I have another? Fine, $350. Do what you got to do. Rotate the tires, balance, the whole routine. I brought in the other car that's owned by our family, Ioniq 5 EV, as you probably know. First year anniversary, didn't visit a dealer the whole time. They actually sent me to a different dealer from the one I bought it from. I had to wait 2 weeks to get an appointment. And they did a couple of recalls, they did a software update, and they rotated the tires $0 from that visit. So that's the future if you're a dealer. $0 from the customer after the sale of the vehicle. That's a big problem. So that's why we're talking about that image on the right. Buy now with one click. We need to get revenue out of these vehicles because what did John Ellis tell us? We're going to have to maintain these vehicles for 10 to 20 years, and so we need to get some revenue for what we're going to be doing to maintain those vehicles. And then we have this horrible economic situation, inflation is on the rise, gas prices on the rise, anxiety is on the rise, the price of a vehicle is on the rise. Salaries are not necessarily on the rise, and we're talking about a change in the whole ownership proposition. So we have these two big players in the market, Tesla and Dara at Uber, saying we are dedicated to ending vehicle ownership. That is a stated goal from day one. We don't want to have vehicle ownership anymore, which is kind of odd because actually Uber is dependent on a lot of people who use their own cars to drive on their network. But anyway. There's also a lot of people who are renting Hertz vehicles to do that. So what's going on here? So it's we're getting new architectures. We've heard a lot about this. So new EV platforms are at the leading edge of technological change. It's because they are new platforms and not specifically because they are XV. So we're getting white sheet, blank sheet design in the vehicles, and it's fueling and fed by this software proposition. And if you want the latest technology, get an EV because those stupid ICE vehicles, they're using old stuff, with too many ECUs and old approaches and old thinking. The latest and greatest is going to be in your electric vehicle. And we've talked a lot about centralized processing in the vehicle. So I love, people talk about, and with all due respect, I hate this, the car is a smartphone on wheels. The car isn't this, it isn't like that. A car is a completely unique development environment, multiple processors, multiple networks, multiple operating systems. It's not like a smartphone at all. And, oh, by the way, when you're using it, you're in a life-threatening proposition. So we're moving in a proper direction here, get to a centralized architecture. This is sort of our view of the timeline on this. And obviously different automakers are at all different parts of this particular spectrum. Ethernet is a big part of this story. I'm not going to dwell on that too much. Now, there is a survey we do for the past several years, and maybe we'll continue doing. We're just working on the results for 2023 with Aurora Labs, the Israeli cyber security software company. And we ask a variety of questions about software in the vehicle, which is one of the most difficult parts of our industry to understand. And now, obviously, it's become so important. But we were asking, what percentage of revenue do you forecast automakers will derive from the selling of new features and functions over the air in model year 2027? And the consensus opinion seemed to be about 10%, which translates to $450 billion of opportunity, which is, I think, north of most of the estimates people have been expressing here. But we're talking about, a lifetime, kind of a proposition. But how do I get my fair share or more of this $450 billion every automaker is asking themselves? And everybody's very bravely saying, we're going to have $20 billion, of revenue, from software and services and things. But how? Okay, that's the question we're trying to figure out. And I do want to make note here, I don't necessarily think of Covisa as a big semiconductor nexus. However, we've had a lot of conversations about semiconductors, and it's important to understand that all of this conversation is driving a massive increase in the amount of semiconductor content in vehicles. So by our estimates, and as I say, we've been forecasting this for many years, which was why we were bought by TechInsights, 2 times the overall semiconductor content of an ICE vehicle, 1.6 times the processor content, 4.4 times the power semi content, 2.2 times the linear content, and 2 times the memory content. And this also means ECUs are consolidating, although the amount of revenue that they will be generating will be increasing. And also we're seeing a shift from MCUs to MPUs. There's a whole bunch more detail that we have in this, but I thought it was significant and worth sharing and important to understand that this is also going on in the background very significantly, and making this industry a very attractive target market opportunity to participate in. So what is driving this? It's safety. It's all about safety. One of the most frustrating things, so we have a user experience practice where we do consumer surveys and ask what people want in their cars and things. And I historically have worked, and as many of you know, in connectivity and infotainment, but in the surveys, safety always comes out higher, more important than infotainment, more important than this sexy screen in the middle of the dashboard. People want safety. Oh, and by the way, all that safety content is mandated by regulatory agencies all over the world. So it's not, while consumers consider it important, regulators consider it even more important, and it's good to have that boost to get this technology implemented and into vehicles. And again, this is what's driving the semiconductor content. And also, it may not be crystal clear to everyone, but this conversation, we see the robo-taxis in San Francisco. Well, autonomous vehicle technology is a thing, or maybe we should be saying semi-autonomous technology, right? Because we're talking about level 2+. Ford was very kind to lend me a Blue Cruise equipped Mach-E while I'm here in town this week, and it's pretty cool. But so is GM Super Cruise. But anyway, I mean, almost every automaker has a level 2+, and of course SAE. They just there's no 2+. But yeah, more or less there is. And even the Hyundai Ioniq 5 has highway driving assist, which is not as good, okay? And my poor BMW just has lane keeping. Anybody here have BMW with lane keeping? Kind of aggressive, isn't it? 3 M series. Kind of aggressive. Yeah, like take the steering wheel out of your hands. But so this is what we're working towards. We're working towards level 2 and level 3. BMW is coming out with level 3 this month in North America. And they're not doing it with that sort of traffic assist Daimler approach. They're talking about, a at-speed, highway speed application that meets European standards. And why are we doing this? Well, A, because we can as an industry, and B, because we're thinking that the customer is going to want to do other stuff, so they want to do more than just take their hands off the wheel. They want to take their eyes off the road and do that other stuff. And I'm not a fan, but this is happening, and we need to understand this. Level 3 is coming, crazy though it may seem. And it's the reason why I say it's a little crazy, it's because you have you have to be prepared to retake control from a state of not being aware of what's actually going on in front of you. So, yeah, it's nuts, but it's coming into the market, absolutely. So I have some further data here about global ADAS demand, $65 billion by 2030. So this is the TAM for tier 1 suppliers, unprecedented dip in 2020, but that's behind us. Best combination of growth size remains in distance warning, automatic emergency braking's the key feature in that category. ADAS domain controllers at 21% plus penetration in 2030. So obviously, we're going to get safety-centric controllers in the vehicle. 1 billion ADAS sensors by 2028, growth for almost all sensor types. Fastest growth in cameras is for internal units for driver monitoring and occupant monitoring systems, LiDAR and bolometer markets. Now, it's important to understand here, I think this is kind of hilarious. So we're working on autonomous driving while simultaneously adding all these systems to make sure the driver's paying attention, but we're working on autonomous driving at the same time. So, and introducing a lot of very confusing systems that all work a little bit differently. They're all very clever. Like I said, the lane keeping in my BMW, I now no longer drive like a BMW driver. I have to signal before I change lanes. So this is a significant burden. I think you can understand that. Blind spot detection has saved my behind on a few occasions. So it's intended to make us better people and better drivers. But they can be confusing, how those systems work. 400 million cameras by 2028, and I was thinking of this slide when we were having the privacy presentation. Privacy? Seriously? Okay. I mean, people ask, all the time, like, wait, my car is going to be watching me while I'm, absolutely. I mean, that's a mandate in Europe, and it's coming here. And more than, driver monitoring, one of the issues here, so if you go to in-cabin sensing events or in the industry, car makers are trying to detect your emotional state. So it's not just, are you paying attention? Are you healthy? You're not having a medical episode. What's your mood? Although most automakers are not quite sure what to do with this information, but they're absolutely putting those sensors to work to determine what that state is. And some of that is as a result, again, of mandates. We're going to have those cameras and infrared and other sensors in the radar in the cabin of the vehicle. Yeah, good luck with privacy. But anyway, so occupant monitoring systems, this is, we don't want to leave, people or pets behind in cars. That's a wonderful thing. And then other automotive OEM sensor suites. So this is just to give you if you want these slides, just contact me and I'll send you the slides. You don't have to take pictures. It's my.
Just telling us.
Yes, well, I meant to say, I usually say at the beginning. I'm sorry, I should have said at the beginning. You want the slides, just email me, whatever. Okay. So, but the point here is you'll see interspersed in here level 2, level 3, level 4. We are working towards automated driving, which is the craziest thing to me is that Tesla got us on this kick, that a vehicle that we would own would drive itself. I thought the idea was that you wouldn't have to own a vehicle because the vehicle would just come when you need it. Is anybody reading the biography, or have you already read the Elon Musk biography by Walter Isaacson? Tut. Get that book. I was at an event last week and someone said, I hate Elon Musk. It's like, don't waste your time hating Elon Musk, but definitely don't ignore him, for crying out loud. Because in that book, and I wrote a blog about it earlier this week, he talks about his vision of robotaxis. He thinks he's going to be manufacturing 20 million robotaxis, which would be 25% of the global automotive market. So maybe he's, maybe this isn't one of his better moves, like not having the flame deflector for his Starship launch that blew up the launch pad. But get the book. I don't get any kickback from that. It's just a very good book. Walter Isaacson spent a lot of time with him, close by his side, watching him making decisions, taking down the things he was saying, both brilliant and ridiculous. And yeah, don't hate him, but definitely don't ignore him. Nobody really has been talking much about 5G, and what makes me a little bit nervous about this is, automotive engineers like, what's the cheapest what's the cheapest module you got? Yeah, 2G, great. Well, how did that work, right? So they mandated eCall in Europe on a 2G device, and then they started shutting down the 2G network. So there's millions of cars in Europe that are equipped with eCall that are going to lose that capability. And it's a major battle going on between, the GSMA and the VDA and, the car companies. Keep those networks, don't shut those networks down. But what is 5G? Do we understand what it is? And is it all about, the guy at the automaker, typical OEM, and maybe some of you have been in these meetings, we can do most of that with LTE. LTE's not gonna be around in a few years, 5, 10 years, not gonna be no LTE. Now you can maybe decontent the 5G to get it to an LTE kind of a price point, but we need to understand what 5G is all about. It's about enhanced mobile broadband, ultra-reliable low-latency communications, massive machine-type communications, network slicing, and C-V2X. Okay, so there's an obligation not to get the cheapest module, but to lay the groundwork to take advantage of the functionality that's implicated in that 5G module. And why is it important? Well, I'm fond of saying that carriers don't understand automobile companies, and automobile companies can't stand wireless carriers, okay? But they're now in the safety conversation with 5G. So it's safety relevant. If you want to be future-proof, you need to have 5G. You have enhanced performance for both safety and infotainment, and a multimodal communication proposition. So automakers are understanding, I should enable the external Wi-Fi, and so I can do ad hoc sideload of data, and 5G, and satellite is just 2 generations away. 5G release 17 will have non-terrestrial network satellite communication capability. And teleoperations, not at high speed. We're not going full speed on the highway with remote control, but in low speed scenarios, yes, it will be important. And what is the future? Software over-the-air updates, we've heard a lot about that. Streaming content, we've heard a little bit about that. In-vehicle contextual advertising and marketing, okay, we've had a few stumbles there, but I don't know how we avoid this. The radio in my Ioniq 5 has the Xperi DTS AutoStage platform, which means it is de facto a connected radio. It's connected to the internet to get the metadata, and Hyundai's just eating the cost of that. And then what is the transition from voice recognition to generative AI going to look like? So in my BMW X3, I say, take me to the E Street Cinema in Washington, D.C., and my BMW's like, whoa, you can't talk to me like that. Whereas my Hyundai with SoundHound, take me to the E Street Cinema in Washington, D.C., no problem, we're on our way, because it's using natural language understanding. Well, the next step is generative AI, and I think we're going to want those kinds of experiences in the car. So what's been happening lately in connectivity in the car? So Daimler reprovisioned all of their AT&T equipped cars to T-Mobile last year. It took about 5 or 6 months to get all the cars transitioned. And that was with Thales, was their partner. I'm sorry, Idemia. BMW is preparing to reprovision all of their T-Mobile equipped cars to Verizon. That hasn't taken place yet, but Eric Varney sidled up next to me when I mentioned this 2 weeks ago in Vegas at Mobile World Congress and said, "Where did you get that information?" I said, "A little bird, Eric." He says, "That's not public." I said, "It is now." The point of it is, they're probably saving some money somehow or other, okay? Now, someone whispered in my ear last night that Verizon has a different business model that might be providing unlimited data. That may or may not be. I sent a question to them to get clarification if that's true or not. GM tried a year ago to include 3 years of OnStar for $1,500 and in putting it on the Monroney sticker, but it wasn't optional. You couldn't, say, "I don't want that," Like Tony Soprano. Did you see that episode where Tony Soprano said, "Yeah, I had all that OnStar stuff taken out of his Cadillac Escalade"? Because if you didn't understand that, when he shot his cousin or whatever, you'd say, like, "Why isn't OnStar showing up?" Because they crashed. Because he had all that stuff taken out of the car. So he doesn't have privacy issues. But GM backed off of this. But what's coming in 24 is 8 years free of Google Assistant connectivity in the car. So I think GM's made the calculation that that's a value proposition that our customers will like. And they've also gone down the path of new business models with Super Cruise. You want to use Super Cruise, you need an OnStar subscription. Otherwise, how would GM be able to upload the latest information about what's coming on the road ahead, like roadworks and things like this? You absolutely need that Super Cruise system to be connected. Toyota, I have to flag Toyota. They just sort of threw in the towel. I look at this as a capitulation. They just said last year, you get 10 years free connectivity. Whatever, we just can't figure this thing out. Just free connectivity. I'm sure it's low bandwidth. You're not streaming content over that. But what we saw earlier this year was Mercedes, Volkswagen, GM shifting to embedded connectivity and away from projected smartphone connections, and all three emphasizing streaming content in the vehicle, gaming, video conferencing, and social media. And you can imagine how I, at a gut level, feel about that, but it doesn't matter how I feel about it. That's what's happening. The automakers want and probably feel they need to have control of the customer experience. So forget about this projecting your smartphone stuff. We're going to do it over the device in the car. We'll figure out the business model. We need to be connected anyway. We need to do those software updates. We need to provide for cybersecurity. And what do the car companies want at the end of the day? They want a single global connectivity platform. I mean, if you're Stellantis, you've got 19 different TCUs to cover all the requirements across all your brands around the world. I want the best connection at all times, regardless of who the carrier is. I want carrier independence. I want the integration of vehicular and non-vehicular connectivity. So we need to be joined up. You've got the web portal, and you've got the mobile app, and you've got the connection in the car. Yeah, it's not working real well. Unlimited automotive wireless data plans, more reliable, comprehensive coverage, and prioritization of automotive safety applications. So that could be network slicing. That very much will be C-V2X. And the software-defined car is built on connectivity. And if you're a car company, you suddenly, since the safety system's functionality is dependent on that connectivity, you suddenly care about predictive coverage. You need to know where you're going, when and where you're going to have coverage. We care about this now. It's not irrelevant. I was talking to a former OnStar executive a year or two ago and said, "Did you use the the cellular connections to map out where coverage was in the United States?" It's like, we just wanted to make sure we had coverage at the dealership. That's all we cared about, to provision the device when they sell the car. Makes sense. But the story has changed. So I stuck these slides back in because there have been a lot of conversations, not in the mainstream, but it does need to be in the mainstream, about C-V2X, okay? And we had the commentary yesterday, what's the constituency for vulnerable road users? Well, all of us, right? We all don't want to hit people, by the side of the road. But that's just one application. It may not be the killer app for C-V2X, but there are others. Sorry. No pun intended. Anyway, I included the C-V2X forecast in here, and one of the reasons why I put it in here was because in China, they don't, quibble about these things. They're not back and forth and fighting over spectrum allocation. China so these are the activities outside China, but inside China, the government just says, yeah, we're doing C-V2X, that's the way it's going to be, and we're using it for infrastructure, case closed, end of story. So that's the other reason why they're further down the road with 5G than we are. So now I have some data about buying stuff in cars, okay? So we did a survey where we were asking people, how would you prefer to pay for this option? Safety package, navigation package, full self-driving package, partial self-driving package, entertainment, off-road, comfort, premium audio, interior and exterior lighting packages. And then we asked, do you want to pay for it all at once? Do you want to pay yearly? Do you want to pay monthly? You want to pay a fee only when you use it? Or I'm not interested in this feature at all. And then there's some more definitions of what those packages would look like. And people are interested in vehicle subscriptions for different kinds of service packages, okay, according to our data. So we were surveying in China, North America, and Europe. And it varies. It varies by age. It varies by region. We go into by car, vehicle, brand owned. I just wanted to give you a taste of this information. So some consumers are very open to the subscription model, especially younger ones, interestingly enough. And then this is just looking at how they would pay. And it's worth noting that the not interested at all applies to off-road leisure, full self-driving, partial self-driving, and entertainment. Not interested at all. The higher interest is in safety, comfort, and navigation. Now, some of it is consumer awareness. Like, if you ask me, I'm aware of, and the European Union has prioritized automated valet parking. The idea of arriving at an office or a parking garage, you get out of the car goes and parks itself, and then it comes back when you're ready to go off. I think that's a compelling application. And as I said, the European Union has identified that as one of the prioritized applications that they're working on. And of course, standards bodies are active, and there's two different, I think ISO and SAE have different approaches, different standards that they're promoting, and one is being followed by Audi and the other by Daimler. But we're working on this problem. There's a company in the US called Steer working on this problem. And I think that's legit. I want to drive to the airport. I want to drive up to the terminal and leave the car, like Louis C.K., if you've ever heard that routine, and then just go in and catch my flight, and the car goes back to the rental car return. Very practical, makes perfect sense. Then we asked interest in individual services. So again, a worldwide survey, 4,990 car owners across the US, UK, France, Germany, Italy, and China. Parking's now the single most important issue globally. All right, calm down, Derek. Just stay in your place back there. With specific needs in Western Europe and now especially in China, where it rates top of the pile. Vehicle payments are gaining momentum too, be it for gas, tolls, or for food. Differences in opinions towards being alerted about events such as traffic incidents vary a great deal. The appeal for management of smart home appliances is on the increase. Interest in apps that increase productivity. Sadly, of all the applications that we asked about, we did not ask about charging. We're doing that in a separate study. Obviously, this is a shit show in charging vehicles today. But the point is, people are interested in this. Now, when we ask about these kinds of, what services are most important to your car, in the car, what connected apps are most important to you in the car, it's traffic, weather, and parking, time and again, regardless of what region you are in the world. But just my own personal experience with charging. So with the Ioniq 5, you get 2 years free on Electrify America. So my wife has the app with appropriate credentials set up on her phone, and she has to use her phone, when she's going to charge, and she loves it, and everything's great. But if I want to charge her car, I have to take her phone. So, suboptimal. And then we were at a charging station a couple months ago, and there's a woman, looks like a couple is there with this beautiful Mercedes-Benz EQS, brand new SUV. And they're trying to figure out the Electrify America charging station. And my wife, she figures out the remote control at home. She's the technical one. And so she's going over to help them while we have our 25 minutes to get our 80% charge in our Hyundai. And I thought it was a couple. It was actually the woman who owned the car and a guy with a Mercedes-Benz shirt on. So clearly she called the dealer and said, "Get your ass down here. I can't figure out how to charge my car, my $80,000, $100,000 Mercedes." We left them there. They still hadn't figured it out. So this is a big problem. It's not part of this survey, unfortunately. But people are interested in paying for these applications. There are connected services that people will pay for. And I've got one of my sons, he was going on a long trip. He has a Model Y. He paid $100, I think, for a week of full self-driving or whatever. So yeah, it's a thing, for sure. And maybe you don't need it all the time. And maybe, you just dip your toe in for a certain kind of experience in your car and you come back later. But our surveys, and these are just, pieces of larger studies, show there is real consumer interest in this. It is a real thing. It is a real market opportunity. And for those of you who are still taking pictures of the slides, anybody who wants these slides, just send me an email or a LinkedIn message. So what's missing? What is unresolved? So vehicle charging priorities and concerns, the role of generative AI, we don't know what that's going to look like. It's probably going to be very much navigation-centric, but it could be something else entirely. The role of OEM mobile apps, I'm not convinced, most people are really grooving on the mobile apps that we're putting in their hands as an industry. My BMW mobile app is virtually useless. To App Store or not to App Store, I think, I'm hearing that question here at this very event. The tokenization of payments, privacy and cybersecurity, I don't consider these to be resolved issues. What is the business model that justifies people paying for these things, and how do I get a piece of the action as an OEM? Integration with dealers. What, are dealers just irrelevant? Do we not care about them? I mean, because they think they own me, the customer, while the OEM thinks they own me. This is not really working out too well. I will say, and again, if you're an OEM, you need to be tightly engaged with your customer because you need to be finding ways to extract revenue from them on an ongoing basis to support your vehicle systems. I've always been a big advocate of customer relationship management platforms like Cox and Xtime, and Hyundai and BMW are both Xtime clients, and we were driving after we had the Hyundai for about a year and get this notification, like a little envelope. Okay, what's this all about? Oh, you're due for a dealer. Do you want to schedule your service for your annual service for your Hyundai? And it was like 7 in the evening. We're driving on the highway at about 70 miles an hour. And it's like, okay. It dialed the dealer directly from the car. Okay, so I don't have to explain how ridiculous that was. So then my wife and I, at 60, 70 miles an hour, are trying to figure out the user interface to terminate the call because nobody's answering the phone at the dealership. Maybe a voice interface, like a couple suggested appointment dates or something. Yeah, we've got plenty of work. So this is lifetime employment guarantee right here, okay? There is so much work to be done. So how to enhance the driving experience without becoming intrusive? The car is a browser. The Google search effect. So, you Google, you buy that backpack, and then it's showing up in all your search for the next 3 weeks. So we want to be helpful. We don't want to be annoying. But the car is a browser. There's an extraordinary value proposition in there, and I know John would back me up on that. I think he wrote a book about that. So customer consent for data sharing and capture, customer control and transparency. Yeah, we got all kinds of work to do here. I think the Mozilla story about BMW et al. Was a little bit over the top, but yeah, we haven't figured this one out. And distraction mitigation, of course. So this is the prize. We are driving towards automated driving. That's why we're doing these things. That's why we're creating these opportunities. Even though at the same time we're trying to make sure the humans are paying attention while they're driving. But this is coming. Level 3 is coming. Level 2 plus is here. And yeah, these guys are acting like tier 1s. NVIDIA, Qualcomm, and Mobileye, and it's all converging. Safety and infotainment they're all coming at it from different directions, but it's converging on the same spot in that center stack in the front of your car. So the growth in auto semiconductor demand is now primarily about content per vehicle and new centralized architectures. The rapid move to electrified vehicles is behind this paradigm shift. We're now in the era of the software-defined vehicle, which is built on connectivity. Connectivity unlocks new subscription models for potential monetization. Many growth projections for automated driving were overhyped, but there are real opportunities. Again, I'm not a big fan of robotaxis, but there are applications that do make a lot of sense. And how can my organization capitalize on these emerging business models? That's what this is all about. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for your attention.